The brain is a complex organ in the head that controls all body functions by processing information and sending signals through nerves. Parts of the brain. The four main regions of the brain are the cerebrum or cerebral hemisphere. The cerebrum is the largest part of the brain among the four main regions of brain. The cerebrum is by far the largest part, making up about 80% of the brain's weight. It is located at the front and top of the skull. It is divided into right and left hemispheres. These hemispheres are separated by a deep groove called the longitudinal fissure and are connected by a large bundle of nerve fibers, known as the corpus callosum, which allows them to communicate with each other. Each hemisphere has some specialized functions, and they control opposite sides of the body. Example, the right hemisphere controls the left side of the body. The cerebrum occupies the front and top of the skull, lying above and in front of other brain structures like the cerebellum. Cerebellum. The cerebellum is the second largest part, and is located at the back of the head, underneath the occipital and temporal lobes of the cerebrum, and is connected to the brainstem. It is often described as a little brain and makes up about 10% of the brain's total volume, but contains a significant number of nerve cells. Diencephalon. The diencephalon is not visible from the outside of a whole brain because of its central and deep location. Although critical for many functions, such as regulating homeostasis and relaying sensory information, it is a small structure located deep within the brain, above the brainstem and below the cerebrum, and is largely hidden from view. Its components, such as the thalamus and hypothalamus, are described as being about the size of a walnut and an almond. The epithalamus is part of the diencephalon and includes the pineal gland, habenular nuclei, and associated fiber bundles. In an adult, the pineal gland alone weighs about 0.1 grams. The small, cone-shaped size is often compared to a grain of rice. Brainstem. The brainstem is located at the base of the brain, connecting the cerebrum and cerebellum to the spinal cord, while the brainstem only accounts for around 2.6% of the brain's total weight. Cerebrum. The largest part of the brain, responsible for functions like touch, vision, hearing, and thought. Divided into four lobes. Frontal lobe, responsible for personality, problem-solving, and voluntary movement. Parietal lobe. Interprets sensory information like touch, temperature, pain, and spatial perception. Temporal lobe, involved in hearing, understanding language, and memory. Occipital lobe. Processes visual information. Cerebellum, located at the back of the brain, under the cerebrum. Coordinates muscle contractions, maintains posture, and controls balance. Brainstem connects the cerebrum and cerebellum to the spinal cord. It is composed of three parts, from top to bottom: the midbrain, the pons, and the medulla oblongata. The brainstem is a vital part of the central nervous system that connects the brain to the spinal cord. It plays crucial roles in various bodily functions, including vital signs, regulates breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. Controls involuntary actions like coughing, sneezing, and vomiting. Sensory and motor functions. Processes sensory information from the eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. Controls eye movements, facial expressions, and swallowing. Coordinates voluntary movements such as walking and running. Arousal and consciousness. Maintains wakefulness and alertness and controls sleep-wake cycles. Autonomic nervous system regulates involuntary bodily functions like digestion, sweating, and urination. Cranial nerve function. Houses the nuclei of several cranial nerves that control various functions, including hearing, taste, balance, and facial sensation. Reticular formation. Contains a network of neurons involved in attention, motivation, and sleep-wake transitions. Brainstem tracts. Acts as a pathway for sensory and motor information to travel between the brain and the rest of the body. Damage to the brainstem can lead to serious health problems, such as coma, paralysis, and death. Diencephalon. The diencephalon is not visible from the outside of a whole brain because of its central and deep location, as it is almost completely surrounded and covered by the much larger cerebral hemispheres. The diencephalon consists of the thalamus, hypothalamus, and epithalamus. It also includes the subthalamus, which is a smaller but important structure located below the thalamus. Together, these structures form a crucial part of the forebrain, situated between the cerebral hemispheres and the brainstem. Located between the cerebrum and brainstem. Thalamus. Acts as a major relay and processing center for sensory information, except smell, before it is sent to the cerebral cortex. It also plays a role in motor control and consciousness. Hypothalamus. Located below the thalamus, it regulates essential functions like body temperature, hunger, thirst, and sleep cycles. It also controls the autonomic nervous system and releases hormones. Epithalamus. Found on the posterior side of the diencephalon, it includes the pineal gland, involved in sleep-wake cycles and puberty, and the habenular nuclei, which have olfactory and limbic connections. Subthalamus. A smaller region that is involved in regulating motor function, consciousness, and other functions through its connections with the thalamus, basal nuclei, and other brain areas. How brain is covered, protected. The brain is protected by the skull, a complex structure of 22 bones that forms a rigid case around the brain, shielding it from external impacts. What is meninges? The brain and spinal cord are covered by 3 layers of protective tissue called the meninges. The singular of meninges is meninx. The meninges. 3 layers of tissue that cover and protect the brain and spinal cord. The 3 layers of the meninges are the dura mater, arachnoid mater, and pia mater. Easy way to remember DAP. Dura mater, arachnoid mater, pia mater. Dura mater, the tough outermost layer that lines the inside of the skull. The dura mater is connected to the skull because its outer layer is actually the inner lining, periosteum, of the skull bones, essentially fusing with the bone itself. 2 layers in one. The dura mater around the brain is made of 2 layers that are almost completely stuck together. It firmly anchors the brain to the skull through its tough, 2-layered structure. The periosteal layer is fused to the inside of the skull bones, especially at the sutures, and the meningeal layer attaches tightly to the periosteal layer and the underlying tissues. This creates a rigid, protective enclosure for the brain and helps prevent excessive movement within the skull. The dura mater is the tough, outermost layer of the protective membranes surrounding the brain and spinal cord. What is falcon cerebri? The falx cerebri is a sickle-shaped fold of this dura mater that projects downward into the longitudinal fissure, separating the 2 cerebral hemispheres and providing structural support. That's bring us the question, what is longitudinal fissure? The longitudinal fissure is a deep groove that separates the 2 cerebral hemispheres of the brain, dividing it into a right and left half. It is also known as the interhemispheric fissure, and at the base of this fissure is the corpus callosum, a band of tissue that connects the 2 hemispheres and allows them to communicate. What is subdural space? The subdural space is a thin layer of potential space located between the dura mater, the outermost layer of the meninges, and the arachnoid mater, the middle layer of the meninges, that covers the brain and spinal cord. Subdural hematomas are typically caused by head injuries, such as falls, motor vehicle accidents, sports injuries, and physical assault. When the head is injured, veins that bridge between the brain and the dura mater can tear. This causes blood to leak into the subdural space, where it accumulates and forms a hematoma. An epidural hematoma is a collection of blood that forms between the skull and the outer layer of the brain, dura mater. It is typically caused by trauma, such as a head injury or fall, which damages a blood vessel in this area. Complications: brain damage, permanent neurological deficits, and death. Epidural hematomas can be life-threatening and require immediate medical attention. The whole time we talked everything about dura mater. All those details we need to know both for lecture and also for lab class of anatomy and physiology. I encourage to take time and go through with the lab models too, as those will come over and over around the course. If you understand the material and visualize it from the lab model, you will find how amazing the brain could be, and everything around you will make sense and will be crystal clear. Also, this is going to be your healthcare field. You will handle those situations times to times with patience. Now we will talk about the second layer, which called the arachnoid mater. Arachnoid mater, the middle, web-like layer. Remembering of Spider-Man web can help to remember. The arachnoid mater is the middle membrane layer of the brain and spinal cord, a delicate web-like tissue. Arachnoid villi are microscopic finger-like projections of the arachnoid mater, which can be larger. Visible structures called arachnoid granulations. Arachnoid villi and arachnoid granulations are essentially the same structures. The arachnoid mater is a membrane layer, while the subarachnoid space is the actual gap that lies between this membrane and the innermost layer, the pia mater. The arachnoid mater is a thin, web-like layer that covers the brain, whereas the subarachnoid space is filled with cerebrospinal fluid, CSF, and contains blood vessels. Therefore, the correct order from superficial to deep is dura mater, arachnoid mater, subarachnoid space, and then pia mater. To transport CSF from the subarachnoid space into the venous blood of the sinus, CSF is produced in the ventricles of the brain by the choroid plexus, a network of blood vessels. It flows through the ventricles and into the subarachnoid space, the area between the brain and spinal cord. From there, it is reabsorbed into the bloodstream through structures called arachnoid granulations. We need to understand clearly what is superior sagittal sinus, as it will come over and over in brain. A large, channel-like structure that is part of the venous system, a major sinus on the top of the brain, running along the midline from the forehead to the back of the head, to collect and drain venous blood from the top and middle of the brain. Pia mater, the delicate innermost layer that directly adheres to the surface of the brain. The pia mater is the innermost layer of the meninges, the three membranes that cover and protect the brain. The pia mater is made of fine collagen and elastic fibers and extends into the sulci of the brain. This delicate innermost layer of the meninges adheres closely to the brain's surface, following all of its contours, including the grooves, sulci, and ridges, gyri. The outer layer of the pia contains collagen fibers, while the inner layer includes elastic and reticular fibers. That's all for today. Next part, we will talk about details about brain ventricle. As brain is an amazing wonder but also very broad topic, it's better and effective way to learn one small chunk at a time, and when you learn the next one, always recall the previous one. That way, everything together makes sense. It took me time to put everything together as brain is very broad topic, it's like a tough nut to crack. Please give me a thumbs up if it helps you, and share with others. Thank you.